In a fractured information environment, isn't it hard to tell what's real and what's not? I'm Molly Thomas, host of a new show called Big If True. We're fighting misinformation one story at a time. Subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Instagram.
You are listening.
You're listening.
You are listening.
You're listening
To a TVO Today.
To a TVO Today
podcast. The following episode is about alleged homophobia and transphobia. Please listen with care.
I remember in the first year, in my classroom during lunch, a music teacher came in and said to me, Fabian, there are about 10 people in the staff room talking about you right now, speculating that you're gay. He said, for everyone to hear, not holding back. And he said, why is that? And I thought, oh man. I took a gulp and I said, well, because I am.
This is Fabian Roberts.
I taught in the Toronto Catholic District School System from 1987 to the year 2000.
Fabian began teaching at Catholic schools during the height of the AIDS epidemic, a time when the secular world was reckoning with the idea of queerness.
See, what happens is when you are told politically you're not as good as, and you're told religiously, it's a grave disorder, it has an impact on you. And you know you're a good person. And I was a fairly confident person, but it still eats away at your own self-confidence.
Growing up Catholic, Fabian says he was raised to believe that his sexuality made him less than. Later in life, Fabian says he felt he had to work even harder to overcome the stigma around being gay.
I made a decision, Matt, at that point. I was going to be the very best I could possibly be at my craft. I poured hundreds of hours into teaching, into all the productions that I did, every extracurricular activity imaginable I did to prove myself.
All the while, Fabian says he had to conceal the fact that he was in a relationship with a man.
The minute we would go to a mall, I would look around. Are there any kids, parents, anyone that could recognize me? If I did, we split. This is what it was like in 88, 89, 90, in those early years.
Fabian and his partner met online in the early days of the internet.
He wanted to meet for dinner. I said, I'm not doing a whole commitment. What happens if this is not going to work out? I just want to meet for coffee. So we did, and we struck it off.
It would turn out to be one of the most important coffee dates of Fabian's life.
He's originally from Venezuela. And, we just hit it off right from the get-go. And so we just continued, and that relationship just blossomed. And we are together now 18 years. Yep, together. Really strong relationship. Very proud of that relationship.
Years later, after marriage equality was legalized in Canada, Fabian and his partner decided they wanted to get married. But first, Fabian made a call to his union, the Ontario English Catholic Teachers Association, or OECTA for short.
And I said, listen, this is a situation. I am thinking about getting married. What are the ramifications for me as a gay teacher? He said, Fabian, I'm going to tell you honestly, I just came from a gay wedding. Don't take any pictures. Don't tell anyone. He said, if it gets out and a trustee finds proof that you're married, he said, they will come after you. He said, we will hire as a union the best lawyers, but I cannot guarantee that we would win because of Section 93 of the Constitution.
Section 93, that's the part of the Constitution that guarantees the right for Catholic schools to exist and uphold what some argue are discriminatory beliefs. According to Fabian, OECTA advised him that Section 93 could be used to justify retribution against him because of his sexuality.
We reached out to OECTA, but no one could confirm that they advised Fabian in this way. The current president of OECTA, Renee Jansen, did say over email that our association supports each individual in the choice they make, as we safeguard their confidentiality and defend their rights to a workplace free of discrimination. Fabian says he and his partner postponed their wedding for years. But then, on their 10th anniversary, that all changed.
We threw caution to the wind and said, you know what? Let's just do it.
Fabian told us they invited 60 people to their home. Family flew in from across Canada and the United States. Fabian said it was a beautiful and intimate wedding.
All kinds of people singing. There was actually a mariachi band at one point.
But Fabian's special day had an unusual condition.
Yeah, it was very emotional. We told people, do not take pictures, do not post anything, do not tell anybody.
What should have been a day of undeniable celebration was marked by a harsh truth. Based on the warning from his union, Fabian felt justly worried that he risked serious repercussions at work from marrying his same-sex partner.
That was on a Friday evening. I went into work on a Monday, and I couldn't even tell the 4 other counselors with whom I worked, who I had a really good relationship with, that I was married. Imagine getting married on a Friday. I told them, finally, the day when I retired, when they had a retirement party, just at our little intimate gathering of 6 of us, they were aghast and very emotional that I had to hide that.
So what was that moment like when you finally said to them, I got married, or I am married?
Listen, I'm emotional talking to you now. You can imagine what it was like in front of them. We cried.
The inclusion of queer and trans people in Catholic education is a tough subject for some Catholics. We've spoken to some who believe transness should not be recognized by the Church, and that marriage exists solely between a man and a woman.
But we've also heard from people like Fabian Roberts, who says queer and trans exclusion in Catholic education has had real-life consequences for him as a gay man.
Is it possible to reconcile queerness with Catholicity? In this episode, we speak to people navigating that duality. I'm Matt Nethersole.
And I'm Tiff. And this is Queries Episode 3. It's Between You and God. Those were members of Ewecta at Pride in 2024. Ewecta has been marching in the Toronto Pride Parade for more than 10 years.
Canada's first Pride Parade was held at Hanlan's Point Beach in 1971. These days, over 250 contingents and hundreds of thousands of marchers participate in the Toronto Pride Parade.
Over the course of a Pride weekend, millions, yes, millions of attendees flocked to Toronto's gay village. We spoke to one Ewecta member, Aileen Santiago, along the parade route. Aileen identifies as queer and trans and is a teacher. Aileen uses they-them pronouns.
For me, it's like, you know what? Expressing that Catholic teachers are pro-inclusion, are on the side of inclusion, and we see our students. It's a powerful message to say that. We as teachers, Catholic teachers at that, we love you, students. We see you.
Aileen believes teachers have a powerful role in the classroom to help students feel included. We sat down with Aileen at our TVO studios to talk about their approach to inclusivity as a Catholic educator.
We are the ones who can shape how welcoming that space is, how inclusive it is, which identities are affirmed, which stories are left out. That already can have a huge impact on how a student is going to understand themselves and their family and their situation.
That question, whose stories should be included, has been the source of heated debate in Catholic education. And in 2023, that debate came to a head at Toronto Catholic, all because of a textbook series called Fully Alive.
If you grew up going to a Catholic elementary school in Ontario, you probably remember Fully Alive. It's a set of textbooks and teacher resources for grades 1 to 8. Fully Alive covers topics like sexuality, marriage, and family, and is used to teach a course called Family Life Education.
Okay, so just to be super clear, Fully Alive is the textbook, and Family Life Education is the course.
And we're going to use a few different course names and textbook titles throughout this episode, but Family Life Education and Fully Alive are going to come up the most.
So, Fully Alive, textbook, Family Life Education, course. Catholic school students are using that textbook and taking that course from grades 1 to 8.
And as we mentioned earlier, the Fully Alive textbooks have sparked some controversy in the last few years, mainly because they define gender as being male or female. They also say that marriage is between a man and a woman, and that sex is solely meant for procreation after marriage. Here's Tanya Callahan, a professor of education and gender studies at the University of Calgary, with more on the Fully Alive textbooks.
You're not going to see that textbook in a publicly funded secular school. What you're going to see that textbook in is a publicly funded Catholic school in both Alberta, originally in Ontario and now in Alberta. And there have been many activists like myself lobbying the publisher of that textbook.
Including activists like former Toronto Catholic student trustee Kyle Iannuzzi.
It just struck me. Oh my gosh, the Fully Alive books. Like, that's where we learn about family life. And that's where the start of sexual health education is for elementary students. And I realized that the first lessons that queers are learning is that they're invisible.
At first, Kyle took their concerns about the Fully Alive textbooks to the Toronto Catholic Board of Trustees. Again, Kyle uses he, they pronouns.
I brought it up at every meeting. It fell off the agenda very frequently. I remember there's many times where I've had to ask the chair, hey, where's the Fully Alive? Why is it not on the agenda? It's not resolved yet. This should be a standing item until it is.
Kyle says he felt like his concerns about Fully Alive were not being heard. So he tried a new approach.
And I thought, follow the money. Who's making a profit from this? Who's earning money from this? I anticipated that it would be a Catholic publisher, but it wasn't. It was Pearson Textbooks. From what I understand, they're one of the largest textbook publishers in North America.
Kyle wanted to ask Pearson Canada why they were publishing a textbook that had no queer and trans representation. They tried to get in touch with Pearson Canada for 6 months with no luck.
But then, in December of 2023, Pearson Canada confirmed that they would stop printing Fully Alive. The discontinuation of the Fully Alive textbooks was covered by news outlets like CBC and CTV. Here's Tanya Callahan with more on that.
They're no longer publishing that book. But nevertheless, the Catholic school education leaders are continuing to teach from that book because they bought the rights to it. They've got it in a physical copy, and they've also got an electronic copy. And they're continuing to teach from it, even though the publisher has withdrawn. They're no longer publishing that book. So that should tell you a few things right there.
We asked Pearson Canada why Fully Alive was discontinued, but they declined to comment. Not long after Pearson Canada stopped printing the Fully Alive textbooks, CTV reported that the entire family life education curriculum was going to be updated by its creator, a group called the Institute for Catholic Education, or ICE. This update would include a new textbook series to replace Fully Alive.
Aileen Santiago was able to review ICE's updated curriculum in its early stages.
The curriculum is interesting because it does not explicitly exclude 2SLGBTQ plus people. And what they did was they more narrowly defined Catholic marriage as a Catholic marriage, right, as a sacrament of Catholicism. And they talk about male and female bodies in the context of reproduction. So they just limit it and they show this is what we're talking about very narrowly. And so that shows that there is an opening for other conversations because you can talk about secular marriages then, civil marriages. You can talk about how they exist. You know, you can talk about male and femaleness in other contexts, and all of that would be aligned with human rights law.
But how would these changes Aileen described be reflected in the new textbooks created by ICE? This was an important question for Toronto Catholic's 2SLGBTQ+ Advisory Committee. And so, on one Monday evening at the start of the 2024 school year, teachers, parents, and other community members logged into a Zoom call to hear about the new revisions.
I'm happy to provide an update with respect to the family life curriculum, but before I do
That's Superintendent Michael Kakamo. His department has been working with ICE to develop the new family life education curriculum.
In our Catholic school boards, the family life curriculum is used to address the small portion of Strand D of health and phys ed, which is known as human development and healthy sexuality. So in grade 1, we have a new program currently that is now called Blessed and Beloved. It is a program that addresses or supports teachers in the delivery of the family life curriculum.
Blessed and Beloved, that's the name of the new textbook that will replace the Fully Alive series.
And the intention is over the next couple of years, next 2 to 3 years, the publisher will put out the subsequent grades.
Kyle Iannuzzi, who petitioned the publisher of the Fully Alive textbooks, also sits on the 2SLGBTQ+ Advisory Committee. They asked the question on everyone's mind.
Would it be fair to say there's no explicit queer representation?
I think that would be a fair comment to make.
Michael Kakamo confirmed that the new Grade 1 Blessed and Beloved textbook would not contain any overt queer and trans representation.
This news came as a blow to members of the committee, who were hoping that their advocacy would have led to more queer and trans representation in Catholic curriculum.
Instead, at this meeting, they found out that Toronto Catholic had already paid the Institute for Catholic Education for the Blessed and Beloved Grade 1 textbook. The total? $220,000. Toronto Catholic stands to pay a projected $1.7 million total should they choose to purchase the remaining 7 books for grades 2 to 8.
Here's Michelle Allen, the co-chair of the 2SLGBTQ+ Advisory Committee, speaking to Superintendent Kakamo at that meeting.
This feels like it was done almost like secretly. We've been talking all year about Fully Alive is totally transphobic and it's not inclusive. And it's like, oh, don't worry, ICE is developing something new. And then before we could see what that was and if it truly met our needs, the board's gone ahead and spent over $100,000 purchasing it. Why was it even purchased in the first place? Yeah. So
One potential way to answer Michelle's question is to look up the food chain, so to speak.
What do you mean?
So we know Section 93 of the Constitution protects the right for Catholic schools to exist in the eyes of the state. But what allows Catholic schools to exist in the eyes of the church? There are a few ways, religiously speaking, that a school can be recognized officially as a Catholic school according to the Vatican's website. And in the case of Toronto Catholic, their designation as a Catholic school is dependent on the condition that they teach curriculum approved by Catholic bishops.
So the Institute for Catholic Education makes the Fully Alive textbooks, the bishops approve the textbooks, and then Toronto Catholic teaches from the textbooks. And that's what makes them a Catholic school.
Exactly. And that may answer Michelle's question about why these textbooks were purchased in the first place, even though they don't contain queer and trans representation.
What's stopping bishops from allowing the Institute for Catholic Education to include queer and trans people in their resources?
I have a theory on that. So, in my research, I was looking at this thing called the Catechism. Bishops over time have contributed to what's essentially a summary of Catholic teachings, and it was approved by Pope John Paul II in 1992. The Catechism contains thousands of paragraphs on various topics, and one of those paragraphs has this to say about queerness. Tradition has always declared that homosexual acts are intrinsically disordered. They are contrary to the natural law. They close the sexual act to the gift of life. Under no circumstances can they be approved.
So if bishops who oversee the Toronto Catholic school system are guided by that teaching, then it's unlikely that they would approve textbooks that contain queer and trans inclusion.
We reached out to the Assembly of Catholic Bishops of Ontario, and they confirmed the Catechism guides how faith is taught, but they also said the Catechism must be considered as a whole, not through individual paragraphs.
Back at the 2SLGBTQ+ Advisory Committee meeting, Superintendent Michael Kakamo was explaining the contents of the new Grade 1 Blessed and Beloved textbook. And Michelle noticed some potential double standards.
Okay, I'm having trouble, single parent families don't really fit with the traditional Catholic values of marriage, neither do divorced families. Why have those families now been included, but not queer families?
That's a great question. I can certainly share that questioning with the Institute for Catholic Education, who worked with the bishops and with the publishers to develop the program, Blessed and Beloved.
But I think that you actually just gave the reason, and it's because it was bishops and ICE that created this resource and not members of the queer community.
Another group within Toronto Catholic was also aware of the possible lack of 2SLGBTQ+ inclusion in bishop-approved resources. That group is the Toronto Catholic Equity Department. They analyzed both the ministry's curriculum and ICE's family life education curriculum side by side in a chart. And their findings revealed that ICE's family life education curriculum excludes some important topics.
Things like understanding of gender identity, gender expression, and sexual orientation, contraception, menstrual health education, and how to recognize signs of mental health concerns.
Toronto Catholic's Equity Department took what they learned from comparing the ministry and bishop-approved curriculums and created a resource for teachers. This resource is called Fantastic Forever.
TVO obtained an early draft of Fantastic Forever. This early draft includes the comparison of the two curriculums in the form of a chart. It also addresses topics like gender, sexuality, and mental health with stories. It even directs teachers to alternate resources to help them fill the gaps between the ministry curriculum and the bishop-approved curriculum.
The introduction of this early draft of Fantastic Forever says that it is meant to be used alongside bishop-approved resources to meet the ministry's expectations. We spoke to Roy Fernandez, superintendent of the Equity Department for Toronto Catholic, about Fantastic Forever.
Pronouns he, him, started this role in January of 2023, and before that I was an elementary school principal for 14 years with Toronto Catholic. I won't drill down too much into the document just yet because we're still in the process. Every day we're revising this, editing that. But essentially it's meant to be story. So stories of that show representation throughout all the different groups, whether it be a queer student, whether it be a student that's from a single parent family, showing that everyone is not just valued, but that these experiences exist within our schools.
Here, Roy says that stories are included in the current version of Fantastic Forever. But it's worth noting that Roy doesn't mention the chart that his equity department worked on, the one that shows the gaps between bishop-approved curriculum and ministry curriculum. That chart is important because it reveals that topics like contraception and understanding sexual orientation are not covered in family life education.
And that could mean Catholic bishop-approved curriculum doesn't meet ministry requirements.
We asked the Ministry of Education how they ensure publicly funded Catholic schools comply with its curriculum standards, and they told us the ministry is responsible for developing and issuing curriculum, but school boards manage delivery of courses. The ministry also said school boards are expected to develop their own policies and procedures to ensure they meet mandated ministry requirements.
But at Catholic school boards, the responsibility of meeting those mandated requirements appears to have fallen largely on teachers. Superintendent Michael Kakamo confirmed this at a parent meeting in 2023.
And teachers can use professional judgment and discretion in how the resource is utilized and what other resources are utilized in the classroom to support the family-led curriculum or other curriculum material.
It seems like Catholic school teachers have to walk a tough line. They've got the Ministry of Education telling them to comply with curriculum standards, and they've got ICE and the bishops creating curriculum that doesn't align with ministry expectations. Then somehow, they're expected to use their own discernment to satisfy both of these competing interests. It seems like an impossible task.
I could see how having that chart that outlines the gaps between the secular and bishop-approved curriculums could be of significant value to Catholic school teachers. It takes the guesswork out of how to comply with ministry requirements.
At the most recent 2SLGBTQ+ Advisory Committee meeting in December 2024, Superintendent of Equity Roy Fernandez confirmed that Fantastic Forever will be pitched as a pilot project in early 2025. What information will be included in this pilot version stands to be seen.
Though it may be daunting to be a Catholic educator, Aileen Santiago says their role provides them with a unique opportunity. An opportunity to model a Catholic identity to their students that's inclusive.
What becomes really important is an envisioning, right? There is room for a Catholic identity that is inclusive, that is the radical love that Jesus showed, right? But I think that there's a lot of protectionist instinct in Catholic spaces where we can only remain Catholic if we protect what was traditional.
Fabian Roberts also worked to model inclusivity in his time as a drama teacher and guidance counselor at Toronto Catholic, despite the stigma and prejudice he faced as a gay man.
For Fabian, one Catholic tenet in particular has helped him reconcile his queerness with his faith.
It's called an informed conscience. As a person, if you find that you cannot, after trying to follow the teachings and you cannot do it, it is between you and God. The church has no right to judge or say anything. You have the right as a Catholic to have an informed conscience, and no one can say otherwise.
For Aileen, the Catholic teaching of infinite dignity is what grounds them in their queer and Catholic identity.
We can't coerce anyone to go against their conscience. My journey has led me to identifying as a queer, trans, non-binary person. Then my fellow Catholics that recognize my dignity mean they have to respect my journey.
It's unclear if further measures will be taken in the future to ensure compliance from Catholic schools with ministry standards. For now, it continues to fall on teachers in Catholic schools to inform their conscience and teach what they think is best for their students.
As Catholic schools struggle to address 2SLGBTQ+ rights in their curriculums, one group is also fighting for their stake in the conversation: parents.
We have seen policies that seek to strip parents from their most fundamental rights.
Parents have always been and will always be the real government, especially for their children.
Some parental rights advocates argue that they have a right to know how their child identifies at school, but some schools say students must consent to having their pronouns disclosed. So who determines what is right for Catholic school students? Their parents, their church, their school, or themselves?
That's next time on Queries in Good Faith. Queries in Good Faith is hosted and written by me, Tiff Lam.
And me, Matt Nethersole.
Sound design and editing by me, Tiff Lam.
Our associate producer is Leticia Dogbe.
Editing and technical support from Matthew O'Mara.
Special thanks to Marina Black, Chris Holtkamp, and Mini Cheesecakes.
For TVO, Katie O'Connor is the managing editor of podcasts and digital video.
Lori Few is the executive producer of digital.
John Ferry is vice president, programming and content.
Theme music by Allison Leighton Brown.
Thank you so much for listening.